So this technology tutorial is about DHTMLX Touch, which is a JavaScript library for developing HTML5 based mobile web apps. And in this we would talk about developing an app using this library, and it's pretty cool and it's pretty easy to do that. So initially we'll talk about the features offered by this library, and then we'll go ahead and build the app and see how an app is built. Alright, let's go. So as I said, this is a JavaScript framework for developing HTML5 based mobile web apps, and it is pretty essential these days because it's a touch based app. So this can actually handle events which are touch based, so which is definitely required these days, and it helps you to build web based mobile apps pretty easily and quickly, as we'll see in this tutorial. Let's look at what it offers. It offers a rich set of UI widgets like list, forms, carousel, and things like grids, etc. And event handling is like any other JavaScript library, like on click, on selected, and things like that. Touch event handling is something which is unique to this library, which is definitely a necessity for mobile web applications these days. And it offers touch events like on long touch, on touch move, on swipe X direction, on swipe Y direction, and things like that. Very easy server-side integration using two libraries. We'll talk about that in the upcoming sections. And this server-side integration is so easy that you have to write just like 2 to 3 lines of codes to do that. And I'll show you how to do it. And one of the unique features which DHTMLX Touch offers is offline data storage on client side. That means when there's no internet connection or when the server is not responding, you can still play with your application because it will be stored on your local cache, and it would be processing requests based on the amount of data it has. All right, so that's pretty cool. So let's take a live demo of Not To Do app. So this app basically I developed using DHTMLX Touch, and it's a pretty simple app, but it will give us a perspective on how easy it is to develop apps using DHTMLX Touch. So let's look at that app right now. So this is the app which I developed using DHTMLX Touch, and as you can see, this app is opening in a open in a web browser on my desktop, and it's a not to do app, which has a list of items which I shouldn't be doing, and I can add tasks. Say I want to add tasks like jog every day, okay, and I can add the task, and which will come up pretty quickly on that. And I can also edit this task as don't jog every day. And as you see, when I clicked on edit, it automatically popped up 2 buttons for deleting this task or editing this task. Don't jog every day. So this is a fairly simple app and to do, and we'll look into the nitty-gritties of this app, as how is backend developed for this, how is server-side integration done with this app, and things like that. All right, let's come back to where we left off. And now we will look at the functionalities this DHTMLX Touch framework offers to us, and how we go about building such an app, like Not To Do app for that matter. It's pretty easy. The tools you would need would be Eclipse or any other IDE which supports JavaScript development. Aptana is pretty good IDE for that matter, and Aptana plugin is also available for Eclipse. So what I did for my coding is I used Eclipse and used Aptana plugin for JavaScript based coding because it requires. And the tool for UI designing, so when you looked at my app, it basically had a list and it had nice buttons and things like that. That can be done pretty quickly using Visual Designer tool. And real device is better, or you can use an emulator as well for testing your application. All right, let's build that app. There are 3 phases requirement. For now, for us, the requirement is pretty clear that we want to build a not to do app, which will have a list and a form and couple of buttons out there and few toolbars. So requirement is pretty clear. What we want to do, go ahead and do, is use the Visual Designer tool, which has a drag and drop interface to sort of build this app. So I'll just quickly show you how that works. So this is the designer tool. You can go to this URL up here to access this designer tool. from here basically you can get the configuration for UI, and it's pretty simple. It looks like a phone. Basically it is like an emulator for the phone, and here are the components which you can use, and you can just drag and drop them. Like if I want to use a form, I'll just drag and drop the form here, and if I want to use a list, suppose, because I would be using a list for, and this is how it comes up. In the form I would need some components, so here you can go and pick those components up from controls, and you can put a text box out there, and you can put a nice button out there, and it's fairly simple to do it. What you can also do after getting your UI done, from here you can basically click on get config, and here you will get the configuration of the whole UI, which you can basically put in your code. Alright, so it's pretty clear how to develop this stuff using DHTMLX Touch Designer. Now let's go ahead and look at how do we code, and what all is involved in coding, and how easily we can do it. So basic steps to get started would be, you just create a HTML5 document by adding doc type HTML tag, which shows that it's a HTML5 document, and you need to include touchui.css and touchui.jss, which are included in the library provided by DHTMLX Touch, which you can download from their website, and you place all your touch component inside a basic component, which is dhx.ui, and here we'll see how. So here you can see it's pretty basic. You just put a link to touchui.css from the code base, and this is a relative link, so I've actually placed my code base and directory near my index.html, so I can easily reference it from here. And in body you can see it's a script type, and as you can clearly see, I have got dhx.ui, and here I'll place the components which we generated using designer tool. You remember we did the get config, and we got the code from there, and we just placed it up here. Alright, that's pretty basic. So this is the first step to get started. Let's look at how do we develop apps. We can use components. So components to use would be list, forms, and toolbars. As we saw, we just use components like list, forms, and some of the buttons and the toolbars. You can just place them row wise, because on mobile phones or the latest touch devices, it's vertically aligned. A lot of things are vertically aligned, and it makes life much easier. And just a quick note, while you are playing with the forms, you can add rules with the forms, like what should happen to a text box, right? It shouldn't be left empty and things like that. And there are predefined rules which are provided with DHTMLX Touch. Also, you can have your custom rules. Like here, I have a view form. I have a form component, and it has got a text box with the ID name, another text box with ID age, and I have placed two rules. This one is predefined, that is name shouldn't be left empty, and it's a predefined rule. However, for age I have defined my own rule saying is positive integer, and this is a function which would return true if it's a positive integer and false. So it's fairly easy to have your own rules. Let's talk about event handling. Event handling is pretty easy. In the HTMLX Touch, it allows you to handle different events. Using its event handling, you can attach events, you can attach methods to events, or you can attach a parameter to a component like list on item selection of a list, and if you attach onto a list, it would basically invoke that event. Or there are special cases like button click handler and keyboard events. And this is how you would do it. It's pretty easy. This is a method for attaching an event, on item click event, to some component. Here with list, we are attaching an on item click using on, and there are a few cases like buttons which are pretty simple. Let's talk about coding using data processors. So in order to talk to the backend, that is the database, you really need some AJAX post requests, like for updating, inserting, and deleting the record. Here we had a list of not to do tasks, and I'm maintaining a database table for storing those results. But from the client side, you really need to talk to them using AJAX post request. That is taken care of using this data processor object. This sort of wraps around all the functionality in itself, and sort of keeps your list updated. And it is like you can attach a data processor object to a component, and then that component would be updated using that data processor object. Here we have the component list, which is updated using data processor object out there. So you can really see how it works. So this is a data processor object, and it is associated with my list. It would populate my list from this URL, which is data.php, which basically does nothing but renders the contents of the table. And if I update anything in the my list, if I add it a item or delete an item, it would, all the changes would be pushed back to the DB when I do dp.send. Building two components. In case you need to update a component through another component, here in this case we were updating our list using form. I can really bind this form with the list, and form would be a slave and list would be the master. And when I update the slave, the master would be updated. And it's pretty simple. So here, let's take a look at it. And here I'm binding my form with the list. So when I save my form, the list gets updated, which you would want in a lot of scenarios. As I said, it offers offline storage, and it can be utilized using dhx.proxy objects. What this object does, it routes all the web traffic through itself, all the web requests through itself. And if the server is not responding, or if internet connection is down, it would serve request from its local cache. Or if there are unsuccessful requests for updating or deletion, it will just keep them to itself until the connection is resumed. And when the connection is resumed, it pushes all the changes to the server. And the code for doing this is here. Server-side integration. For server-side integration, it's pretty easy using DHTMLX library, which is available for PHP, Java, and ColdFusion right now. And it simplifies data loading from DB. So all the crude operations, create, read, update, or deletion operation, can be done very easily without writing any of your AJAX post request. And this is the server-side code for it. Here, it requires two PHP libraries, connectors / data connector.php, which is available with DHTMLX Touch framework, and connector / db mysqli.php. Here, what I'm doing is I'm connecting MySQL database. This is my username. This is the server location or the IP, and this is my username, and this is my password. This would be the database name, and this is the table name. This is primary key, and these are the associated columns which I want to render. And this would serve for everything. It would update the records and delete the records. It works in tandem with data processor library, which we talked earlier. Touch events, as I told, it handles touch events like on swipe X, on swipe Y, long touch, on touch move, on touch end, start, things like that. These are the references for documentation and Visual Designer Builder tool, which we spoke about, and Aptana plugin. Let's take a quick look at how I have actually coded data.php and index.html for this app. If you look at index.html, it's pretty simple. I have my dhx.ui, which I showed earlier, and it has it's a layout. The outer component is a layout, which has few toolbars, couple of toolbars out there, and a list, which is my task list, as you can see out here, and it is filled from data.php. And then I have a form with couple of buttons like add, done, deleting, and couple of batches. And I would hide these batches based on the user, where user is presently. And if you see here, I have got DHX data processor object, and the master is task list, and here I have bound the form with task list. And that's how. So it is this easy to do. And this is my data.php, which is my server side, and it is practically the same code which I showed you in the slides. And this is it, and this is my application, and this is how I created my not to do applications using these two files. Thank you. Done.